Aboard cruiser Spirit of the Republic, Christophsis,
This sounds like a lot, even for a Jedi.
said Ridge.
I heard you were surrounded by droids.
Hez put in.
How did you ever get the shield down?
Rex really needed to have this "don't go killing yourself to prove we need you even if you're a Jedi" conversation with Ahsoka, but his boys had swarmed her almost right after they had lifted off. They all stood in the hangar, forming a semicircle around the young Togruta. Ridge, Hez, Korik, Lun, AR, Vase, Ged, Addy, and Nax were all listening to Ahsoka's tale of her first adventure with rapt attention. Even a couple of the soft-shell flight deck workers had stopped in. Rex watched from the sidelines, helmet under one arm just like the rest of them.
Okay.
Ahsoka said, hands outstretched in order to placate her captive audience.
So there's a wall behind him, right? Well, I pull the wall down on top of the droids, destroying them and saving the general.
She gestured animatedly as she told the story, headtails bobbing. The troops around her burst out laughing.
Oh, you never, ma'am.
Vase exclaimed.
That must have made the General's day.
Rex heard a sigh from beside him. He started a bit, then turned. General Skywalker himself was standing right there. He wondered for how long. He couldn't help but have a bit of a smirk himself.
That, true, sir?
Rex couldn't help asking.
Well, most of it.
Skywalker said, the ghost of a smile passing over his lips.
I'm never going to live that down, am I?
Rex shrugged.
Give her a moment to enjoy it, sir. It's all part of winding down after you've been scared witless and survived to tell the tale. The boys know that. She did pretty well, you have to admit.
Skywalker didn't respond, but he swept closer to the circle of clones. Rex followed, sensing his presence might be needed.
Humility is a requirement for a Jedi,
the general said. There was no edge to his voice, but his words were chiding all the same. The troopers had already snapped to attention. Ahsoka spun around, caught off guard. Rex was honestly surprised that she didn't sense her new master sneaking up on her. Maybe she needed time to perfect that particular skill. Or she was too busy basking in the adoration of the troops.
Apologies, sir, but we asked questions. Padawan Tono was debriefing, not bragging.
Good old Lun. Hell, if Rex hadn't been standing there watching the whole exchange, it would have been a good defense. It was even harder to buy, given the way Ahsoka's eyes darted towards him, flashing with surprise and gratitude. Rex felt it was time for him to earn his keep as the master of face-saving. He slapped his gloves together.
Come on, you lot,
he barked.
You haven't got time to warm those crates with your backsides. What are you trying to do? Hatch something? Get to work.
The men dispersed. Rex saw Ridge was still snickering to himself. The kid was pretty new. For his sake, he hoped this wasn't an event he brought up around the general later. He'd get a healthy dose of reality shoved up his shebs. Rex turned back around. He still needed to have his chat with the kid. But apparently, the general got first dibs. Skywalker had pulled Ahsoka aside, intending to have a chat of his own.
I was just keeping up their morale.
Ahsoka was saying.
They need to know we take the same risks that they do. That we'll sit down and talk to them, and know their names instead of just snapping our fingers and calling them clone. Nobody likes being treated as if they don't matter.
Okay. Should Rex be sticking around to listen to this? He wasn't sure. The kid clearly said what was on her mind all the time, without tact. This was probably the most un-Jedi-like Jedi he'd ever met. That didn't make her wrong. The boys appreciated what she was doing. He probably would too, if she ended up growing on him. Rex slipped his helmet over his head.
Well,
Skywalker continued.
They seem to like you. That's good.
They've lost so many of their friends. Can't you feel their pain?
They're soldiers,
Skywalker said flatly.
It's the job.
It's yours too, but you hurt all the time.
Okay. It was time for Rex to remove himself from what was shaping up to be a very personal conversation. Knowing the pair were watching him, Rex pretended to be engrossed in some data download or communique coming through to him through his helmet. He took a few slow steps away. This was definitely not in his job description. Not only was he a master of face-saving, but tact as well. The Kaminoans and Mandalorians were both pretty big on manners and boundaries. For the most part, he'd been taught well. He didn't have to pretend long. Glancing back, he saw that Skywalker and his new Padawan were trotting over to meet Generals Kenobi and Yoda, who had materialized out of nowhere. Some sort of discussion was taking place, and Rex figured they were about to be sent off on another mission to some other far-flung corner of the galaxy, without much rest or replenishment, of course. That was just the 501st way, wasn't it? Rex drew closer and stopped beside Ahsoka, striking a parade arrest pose.
I'll get the troops organized.
Ahsoka said, perking up.
Ready when you are, Master.
I'd better get underway.
General Kenobi said, one eyebrow raised.
Mustn't keep Jabba waiting.
Jabba? The Hutt? What in the stang did he have to do with their next assignment? Before Rex could ask any questions, General Kenobi had bowed and turned away with General Yoda. Skywalker disappeared. Rex spied him heading off toward what seemed to be a machinery alcove. After some privacy, he supposed. For what? He wasn't sure. Ahsoka spun around, braid swinging behind her.
Come on, Rexter.
She said, setting off at a smart pace.
Let's get the boys squared away.
Rex raised an eyebrow. Sky Guy, Rexter, R2E. The nicknames just kept on coming.
What exactly,
he said,
are we getting the boys squared away for?
Well,
she said, glancing back at him.
the Council wants us to go rescue Jabba the Hutt's son. Something about us needing his permission to use the hyperspace lanes. We're heading to some planet called Teth.
Teth.
Rex said. With a few blinks, he brought up some data on the planet. A jungle world. Outer Rim. Very Outer Rim.
Lovely. You know, we need to have a chat, kid.
Ahsoka's step faltered.
About what?
It was clear to Rex and every other organic with a brain that she was terrified she had messed up somehow, crossed some line, did something wrong.
It's nothing bad.
Rex assured her.
I'd just like to clarify a couple of things after our last discussion.
Right.
Korik.
The sergeant materialized next to Rex, helmet in hand.
Sir. We're taking off for the planet Teth within the hour.
Rex told Korik.
Get Torrent Company in the loop. They'll need to be ready for combat. We're apparently rescuing Jabba the Hutt's son. I'll check in with the general, but he'll probably want everyone for a briefing in an hour.
To Korik's credit, his expression remained neutral.
Yes, sir. I'll let the men know.
He disappeared. Rex cast around, searching for Ahsoka.
Where the...
She'd slipped off. Luckily for him, a short, orange-skinned Degruta girl was probably the least difficult thing to spot in a hangar full of tall human men in white armor. There she was, standing just outside the mechanical closet that Skywalker had taken refuge in. Maybe her Jedi powers weren't sensitive enough to figure out when someone needed space. Rex marched across the docking bay, reaching the Padawan just as her master emerged from the mechanical closet, a distant look in his eyes. Rex didn't psychoanalyze. It wasn't his specialty. You couldn't learn everything on the holonet. The general spotted him approaching.
What's the situation, Rex? Korik's notified the men, sir.
Rex reported.
We'll be ready whenever you want to hold a briefing. Good.
Skywalker massaged his temple with his left hand. Rex knew his dominant hand, the right one, was mechanical. That couldn't be comfortable.
I'm going to let Admiral Yularen know our destination, and then I'm going to meditate.
Sure he was. Rex didn't know what his general did when he was meditating, but he'd bet it wasn't meditating. It wasn't his business to know.
Yes, sir.
Skywalker trudged off. Ahsoka made to follow.
Avoiding me, little one?
Rex asked, training the piercing stare of his T-shaped visor on her.
I don't bite. Unlike you, probably.
She flinched, stopping dead in her tracks.
Okay.
Her voice was barely louder than a whisper.
You got me.
She turned around.
Where are we talking?
Rex glanced around, then gestured to the closet General Skywalker had only just recently vacated. Ahsoka sighed, then trudged into it. The boys wouldn't miss him for too long. He could take a moment to make sure Skywalker's new Padawan wasn't about to throw herself into the line of fire in order to gain the respect of her troops. Rex followed her in, then shut the door behind him. Ahsoka sat on a supply crate, her legs clamped together, hands clutched tightly around her arms. He didn't need to be a Jedi to figure out her emotions. Rex leaned against a section of shelves across from her.
I hope you didn't take the wrong part of our conversation to heart,
he said, removing his helmet.
What do you mean?
She actually looked up, meeting his gaze. Rex found himself momentarily captivated by the headdress she wore. It was a series of large triangular things connected on a string that framed her face where skin met headtail. Were those teeth? He knew little about Togrutan culture and wondered if he should take the time to educate himself on the species now that he was going to be working with one of them. Or maybe that would be too much. If he really needed to, he could calm Gree when he had free time. If he said the word, the other clone might just go on for hours about Togrutas, or any other species for that matter, giving him all the information he needed and more. Maybe some other time.
I just don't want you to think that you have to do needlessly dangerous things in order for the men to respect you,
Rex explained.
I've got no problem watching your back, but I have my limits. I'm no Jedi.
Ahsoka shifted.
Oh,
The markings above her eyes lifted.
I thought I did something wrong.
Course not.
Rex said.
It's only been a few hours. If you'd managed to do something wrong that quickly, it'd be a new record.
The kid grinned.
You don't need to worry, Rex. I got this. I'm not planning on dying anytime soon.
Rex smiled back.
That's good. You've already won over the boys. It'd be a shame if you only made it a day with the 501st.
You really think they like me?
Most of them aren't exactly shy.
Rex said.
If they didn't like you, you'd probably know, protocol or not. Long as you stay charming and pull your weight, I think we'll all get along just fine.
Ahsoka laughed.
Noted.